Time for Sky Bet York Ebor Festival Saturday preview. I'm Dom and I'm joined by Ben Linfoot and Richard Mann to look ahead to the final day of racing in York. We will be looking at the Sky Bet City of York Stakes, but we'll dive right in to the culmination of the Sky Bet Ebor Festival with a terrific renewal of the Sky Bet Ebor. And one of the favourites here is Earl of Tyrone from the yard of Paddy Toomey. Now, we were lucky enough at Sporting Life to head over to the yard of Paddy Toomey last week, and you can see the full interview with Ollie Bell over on our YouTube channel, alongside other interviews with some of the top trainers based in Ireland ahead of this York Ebor. But back to Paddy Toomey's yard then, and Earl of Tyrone is one of the favourites into this race, and rightly so. And he's been a big improver for the yard, Rich.
He has massively. 4 starts since joining Paddy, won his last 3, and he's really going through the ranks. I think Paddy Toomey is a name to watch actually in Ireland. I think he's going to become one of the next big powerhouse trainers. But this fella's done everything right, and he gets in here off what looks a nice weight, rapidly improving. Son of Australia, stamina will be no issue at all. I think he's got loads in his favour. I mean, the Irish have got a good record in this race anyway, and I think he's the pick of theirs this year.
Good. We've got the time form ratings on screen now. Can you talk us through that? Earl of Tyrone, obviously top rated there, 123.
Yeah, he's top rated. The market's found him. He's 11 to 2, 6 to 1 favourite. I think he's rightfully one of the market leaders. I'd maybe have Garcia of William Haggis's just above him in the market personally. I just wonder, Rich, Earl of Tyrone, he's done his winning in Ireland pretty much from the front, hasn't he? He's led in a lot of his races, 24 runners. I'm just wondering, it's a different question. He's a powerful galloper. I'm sure Paddy Toomey is confident he can answer this question, but it is a different task for him in such a big field.
It is. I suppose it's a different task for a lot of them as well. One thing I'd say about that, pace usually holds up well at York. I think prominent races ideally suited. I don't think he'll try and make the run in here anyway. I think Starlight's a lovely draw at York. I think sometimes you look for a low draw and you can be boxed in on the inside, coming around the bend. I think 8's absolutely perfect.
So ideally just sitting in the van, maybe getting a toe into it off a couple of leads.
Yeah, and I think he'll get on really well. I think he'll stay this trip at this track really well.
It's a strong Irish hand this year. Irish have won it 2 out of the last 3 years, and Akita Sushi is well worth a look at here, Scoop.
Yeah, just for Brian, a trainer well versed in this type of race. Obviously, he's won the Melbourne Cup a couple of times, and a lot of these horses will be going on to Flemington, you would think, later in the year. Akita Sushi is an improving stayer. He's only 4 years old. He's only had 5 runs in his life, so he's massively unexposed. He's on the right sort of trajectory. We saw him at Royal Ascot in June, went 3rd to Get Shirty. He was a little unlucky that day. Probably could have done with a more prominent ride. He encountered some traffic problems along the way, and then was smashed 10 lengths by stablemate Shoshone Warrior last time at Leopardstown when trying to give him a stone. So he's had a few interesting prep runs, and you can absolutely see why he's sort of single figures for this race, because he's exactly the type of profile you look for from a trainer who knows exactly what he's doing in this type of contest.
Okay, and Rich, licence.
Very interesting. I mean, Jay Lyons won this.
Similar sort of type, really.
Absolutely, and Jay Lyons won this race 3 years ago. And if you look back at with Mustard G, if you look back at his profile, quiet runs throughout the season and then peak for the big day. And Licence, a similar sort of profile, but probably not as much experience. Deeply impressive when winning on debut last June. 3 runs this year. I don't think they were thinking handicaps at the start of the year, Ben. I think they were probably hoping that they might have a classic horse on their hands. It hasn't worked out, but I didn't think a mark of 103 was beyond him. Talking about draws, though, stall 19 might be tricky for Colin Keane.
Okay, continuing the Irish assault then, Ever Present. We've got a video here of Ever Present, looking in fine form at the moment, Rich.
Yeah, look, another one, really strong Irish hand. I mean, you look through, I think Earl of Tyrone's probably the pick from Ireland.
Ever present there, Rich, with the yellow cap on the rail. This was a lovely prep run because he stumbled out of the stalls. Everything went wrong for him this day. He encountered traffic problems. You can see he's just ridden softly with another target in mind, really. And this looks the target. Jesse Harrington actually put him in a Royal Ascot race in June with, I don't think any ever intention of running him, just to see what his mark was. And he's got a mark of 106. And judging by his Leopardstown victory last September on Irish Champions Weekend, when he won off a mark of 100 in the Patingo handicap, which is one of the best staying handicaps around in Island, he's clearly got a really good chance from a handicapping point of view. Now, his owner, Christina Patingo, has got another one in there, John Leaper, who's quite interesting as well. I've been following him closely this year. He's running a couple of course and distance races at York behind Without a Fight, where he's shaped as their 1 mile 6 at York off a strong gallop. He's really going to suit him, and I think that's the sort of horse you've got to look for in this race, because it's a tight handicap. You can make cases for many, but who is this race going to suit? Who's going to thrive off a strong gallop in a big field and come home strongly? And I must admit, John Leaper's pretty high on my shortlist.
What are you looking for in an Ebor winner? Of course, we saw Ever Present there, obviously not winning the race that we highlighted, but you see something in him, and is it looking ahead at this race?
Well, I think target trainers, I mean, it's such a valuable pot, isn't it? I mean, most of these horses here, this race have been working back from since the start of the year, and really good target trainers. I mean, Ben's mentioned Jessie Harrington there. Her horses were actually under a bit of a cloud at the start of the season, but they're flying now, much better form. And she's a brilliant target trainer on the flat and over jumps. That's something I always look for. I just want to know who's been eyeing this race for a long time. And personally, I love horses coming into this race who have had a little bit of group exposure, group form in the book. I think you need to be a classy horse, Ben, to win this race.
I think you do. You've seen that over the last few years with the type of horses that have won it, Sunny by Lust and Fajera Prince, who was a good group horse for Roger Varian, and Muntaha for the Gosdens. That's the sort of classy type this race attracts. I think he's got everything this race. If it hasn't got one thing, it's a really good stayer, giving a load of weight away, the type of horse you might see in a Lonsdale Cup, like Stradivarius, Coltrane, that sort of horse. Trushan, who won a big staying handicap earlier in the season, the Northumberland Plate, giving weight away. We haven't got that. We've got a tight handicap, but there's loads of potential in there. I'm sure there's a handful of horses who could go on and represent themselves in group company after the Ebor. There'll be Melbourne Cup ambitions as well. So it's tough to nail down what exactly you need, because you could find the best handicapped horse in the race and still lose. It's that type of race. It's really tough to unravel. So I think you've got to look at conditions on the day. Who's it going to tap? I mean, we must mention this Alfred Boucher at the bottom, who sneaked into the race for Ian Williams, because he absolutely dotted up at York the other day, didn't he? 3 days ago under William Buick, travelled like the wrath of God into the race. That was over 2 miles. It was a weaker race, but he's clearly thriving. He's just sneaked in at the bottom. He wouldn't be your typical Ebor winner by any means, but he's dead interesting.
To me, he looks as well like the horse that, as soon as he hits the front, does absolutely nothing. And I think now Ian Williams has got hold of him. Fantastic trainer, another target trainer. He's the sort who could unearth a lot more out of this horse. And I certainly don't think what we saw earlier in the week was the scale of his ability anyway. I think he could be just about anything for this trainer.
OK then, chaps, before we move on to the City of York Stakes, best bets for the Ebor.
I'm going to go with Earl of Tyrone, but I must mention Candleford, a really good winner at Ascot, and then completely forget the Newmarket one. It was a messy race. Everything went against him. So I'd give him a chance for William Haggis. It's been a big week for the Haggis stable, obviously with Baid winning the Juddmonte. But Earl of Tyrone, he looks pretty solid to me.
That's good.
Yeah, William Haggis has got a really strong hand. I think Garcia should probably be favourite. He was really unlucky at Haydock. I think he'll stay, and he's got a very good chance. And John Leaper each way, who's been on my radar for this race for a long time.
OK. We heard her name mentioned there, Jessica Harrington. Again, we've got a really nice exclusive interview over on the Sporting Life YouTube channel, so make sure you check that out ahead of the weekend's racing. Right, moving on to the Sky Bet City of York Stakes. We'll get the time form ratings up on screen now. Scoot, let's start with you. What are we looking at?
Yeah, it's a fantastic race. It's a Group 2. We're perhaps pushing for it to be a Group 1. So York's got a Group 1 every day of the Ebor meeting. Hopefully that comes to fruition in the future. It looks like a Group 1 this weekend, because we've got Group 1 horses in there like Sacred and Sandrine and Rohan. And it's shaping up very nicely. You've got Rohan at the top of the ratings there. Not really a surprise on the very, very best of his form. Obviously won the Wokingham for the second time in 2 years earlier in the season, which is a tremendous achievement. That's the big question mark, the trip, because we know he's good over 6. But is he as good over 7? And also he's a hold-up horse, and it's very tough to come from off the pace at York. So there is a few little question marks over him, even if he is the time form top-rated horse in the race. But it's a lovely little contest. I like Brad the Brief. He's in there in second. I don't think there's an awful lot of pace in this race, and I think you might want a prominent racer who's got the speed for 6. and who has got the mettle to see them off over 7. Brad the Brief could be that horse. The one little tiny question mark with him, he's had a little bit of a break, he's been off for 3 months, but also he could probably do with some ease in the ground. But at the prices, at 8.5 to 1, I think we're looking at 9 to 1. I'll probably chance him on the fast conditions.
Okay, and Richie, I mean, he's not been seen since March, but you've got a bit of a twinkle in your eye for Al Sahel.
I'm a big Al Sahel fan. This horse, massive engine, really talented horse. And look, he's got a pretty good record, but I've always felt he's one who probably need conditions in his favour to show his best. And I think 7 furlongs on a quick flat track is absolutely ideal for him. The layoff doesn't bother me one dot for Charlie Appleby. I think he's brilliant at bringing them back after a break. I think he's got a lot in his favour. To me, he's probably just about the classiest horse in this lineup. I've not always been that enamoured with his finishing efforts sometimes. I think he's a real strong travelling horse, but I think he's got a lot of talent. I think this track will really play to his strengths.
Okay, Scoop, Sacred Sandrine came up against a few of these at Goodwood recently. What are we thinking?
Yeah, so Sacred and Sandrine. Sandrine won that race, the Lennox Stakes, last time at Goodwood. She was a 12 to 1 shot that day and 4 to 1, 9 to 2 this time around. And everything went in her favour at Goodwood, really. She ran prominently, and that was the place to be in a race where they didn't come from off the pace. So I would be against her just on a value basis with that in mind. Sacred, I think she needs everything to go her way, and I also think she needs a really strong gallop because she's a strong traveller. She's got the speed for 6 furlongs. She does stay 7, but I just think she needs a really strong gallop for everything else to come off the bridle, and she'll come there cruising. I'm not sure she's going to get that this time.
No, I'm not, and I wonder if we're getting to the point with Sacred where we're not entirely sure what our best trip is. I mean, we thought 7 furlongs, didn't we? And then it didn't quite happen at Goodwood. I know she had a wide draw that day. Ran over 6 at Royal Ascot the time before, looked like she was crying out for 7. And like you, I think it's more just the way the race unfolds than actually the trip. I think she does. She needs absolutely everything in her favour, and on a track like this and looking at her price, I'd probably look elsewhere.
Okay, right, before we go, selections for the Sky Bet City of York Stakes. Rich, let's come to you first.
Yeah, I'm staying low with Al Sahel.
Okay, Scoop.
And I'm going to chance Brad the Brief on the ground. I think he could get this race run to suit.
Okay, well, that's it. Thank you for joining us for the Sporting Life Timeform York Ebor Festival Saturday preview. There's plenty more to get your teeth sunk into at sportinglife.com, so head over there now. And like we've mentioned many times during this video, there's loads to get your teeth sunk into on YouTube as well, including exclusive interviews with Jessica Harrington, Paddy Toomey and Aidan O'Brien.